welcome to Friday's edition of Just Onside. I'm stuttering because it's so cold outside. Uwais, end of the week, Friday. How are you feeling?
Oh, you mentioned last time on the last podcast, Ayub, it was a nippy evening, and again we've had a few nippy evenings since. It is bitterly cold. Morning drives, goodness gracious me! I think it's been snowing in the northeast. We've not had any snow that I'm aware of in the northwest, but it feels like something might be on its way. That's how cold it is.
That's what the forecast says, isn't it? I don't know whether it's tomorrow or whether it's Sunday, but I'm not looking forward to it. I've got a trip to France on Monday, so. Normally I'd sort of say I'm going off to warmer climes, but I don't think it's warm in France as well. So it is winter. It's to be expected. So, but let's see if we can talk about football and hot us up. All right. So
Just before we do it,
Leeds. There's always a little bit of Leeds.
There's always a little bit of Leeds. I mean, we like to indulge. I think the viewers like to hear your thoughts slash ramblings. Delete as appropriate on all things Leeds. I've got a few comments of my own, but I'm going to give you the floor. You good win in midweek, home to Swansea. I think it was 3-1. Your third solidified third position, and I think one of the top two, Leicester, was it, drop points. So how do you see it? How do you see it shaking out? Good result, right?
Result was excellent. I mean, we played okay. I mean, it wasn't vintage Leeds, but we got a good result against a decent Swansea side, albeit they're very sort of towards the bottom end of the table. But they played decent football. It was a cracking game in terms of drama. I mean, the first 30 seconds we scored a goal. It was disallowed, offside by a fraction if it was offside. Within 30 seconds of that offside goal, they go up the other end, they score 1-0 to Swansea. 2 or 3 minutes later, Pirouz scores a wonderful goal against Somerville. He's been fantastic. I'd be surprised if there's no interest for Somerville. I don't think he'll go, but they should be. I think the top side should really be sniffing around Somerville. He's an exceptional talent. He's a young player as well. He's just going to get better and better and better. So I think if there's no clubs that make an inquiry for Somerville, I'll be really surprised. So 1-1, right at the fag end of the first half, Rutter scores a quality goal. It's route one, Ampadu pumps it long. Brilliant control. If you've not seen it, viewers, and I'm pretty certain viewers haven't because they don't follow Leeds the way that I do, I would implore you, go onto YouTube, watch the game. Or if not watching the game, certainly watch Rutter's goal. The first touch is 35 million. And there's a reason why he's 35 million. That first touch is sublime. Decent finish. Dan James, who's some people are sort of dissing him, but I sort of said he's found his level. But he scores the third, and it's a pretty comfortable 3-1 victory in the end. So, but we've just got to keep on doing it. I said it in the last show. It's a league where you just can't afford to have like 2 or 3 bad weeks, because that's about 5 or 6 games in that space of time. So we've just got to carry on winning. We've got a tough game. It's Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough tomorrow at 3:00. It's a home game. We've been absolutely we've been pretty ruthless at home. So I'm hoping much of the same. But again, it's not a gimme. It's not a walk in the park. So I'm hoping we're on our A game. If we're on our A game, we should win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look, I feel like with Leeds, you are. I mean, it's your club. You're emotional about it, and you have every right to be emotional about it. Very inconsistent though at the best of times as well. I must say that's your thoughts, not Leeds. Probably Leeds as well, to be honest. But no, the third. I think Middlesbrough mid-table, right? So home. Let's see how that shakes out. They are mid-table, right?
10th, yeah. But there's not much difference between 4th, 5th, and sort of 11th, 12th. It's a very tight and compact league, the Championship, as it always is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I follow Leeds simply because of you, Ayub. I mean, I've got to keep up with what's happening with Leeds, and I don't know if you read the recent article by your former owner, Massimo Cellino. Have you read the article?
I tend not to pay attention to it. He's a lunatic. He's off. He said, what's he said?
Well, I mean, he gave an interview and he was talking about, obviously, his time. I think he's owner of Brescia now in Italy. And he was talking about how, he's obviously got a few idiosyncrasies and mannerisms about himself. He's very eccentric. He's got a distrust of the colour purple, refuses to sign players on the 17th of any month because I don't know, he thinks it's bad luck and what have you. And he talks about the fact that when he was at Leeds, Ayub, his pronunciation, his accent, and everything. His English wasn't great, and his issue with the color purple, which is associated with funerals in Italy. He talks about the fact that my English was poor, my pronunciation was terrible, and when he got into Leeds, there was a couch that was purple in one of the suites at Ellen Road, and he talks about how. He said, "Change the bloody couch. I don't want to see it anymore." And they ended up firing the bloody coach because when he said couch, they heard coach. And Brian McDermott was the coach at the time. And they actually fired him because they thought the owner wanted the coach fired as opposed to the couch changed. Genuinely, that's a true story. I'm not lying.
Is that right? I mean, it's interesting that you've said that because there was McDermott was fired within, I think, 24 hours because we as fans revolted because he was doing an okay job at the time.
No,
and he was reinstated.
Yeah, so well, he said, well, it's true. It's exactly how you remember it because he said change the bloody couch, and they ended up firing Brian McDermott off the back of that statement. The story goes on. He said. The guys came up to him and said, "Look, who's taking the team tomorrow?" And the owner said, "Well, why?" And they said, "Well, we don't have a manager." He said, "Well, you fired him." He said, "I fired the manager when?" So I mean, this is a story that goes on and on. I think it was Nigel Gibbs who then took over the team, McDermott's assistant. But I mean, this is the kind of shambles of a football club, Ayub, that you associate yourself with. Probably quite at that time.
I mean,
I would say
I think now we've finally got a little bit of stability with the 49ers. I think it's when you don't hear from the owners, it usually is an indication that they're decent owners. They're letting the coach run the football side of it. In terms of the business side, they do it very quietly. I mean, the 49ers are an established organization, and the chairman that we've got. Parag Murat, he's very experienced. So I think at the moment we're in safe hands. There's talk of increasing the capacity to 55,000. So at the moment, we're going in the right direction.
It's a lot for a championship club.
Well, there's a reason why we're trying to increase it to 55,000. I think the aspirations are, what the aspirations are. Leeds fans want to be in the Premier League, which is where we should be. So at the moment, it's been a decent season thus far. But this is Leeds United Football Club. We never, ever do things the easy way. So today, I'm in a good space because we won. Tomorrow, come 5 o'clock, I'm not sure exactly where I'll be in terms of my mood, because that depends on how we perform, or more importantly, the result. I mean, I think performance is important, but it's a results business. So if we get 3 points, I'll be a happy bunny tomorrow. But enough about the Championship and Leeds United Football Club. Let's talk about the big game at the weekend, or at least what we perceive to be the big game. I mean, we've discussed it, and we've considered Newcastle, Manchester United to be the big game. They had very, very important games during the week in terms of the Champions League. Sort of both games were draws, but there was a lot of controversy in the Newcastle game, PSG. I mean, I didn't watch the game, but I've certainly watched the highlights, and my goodness me, that was controversial. I've got a feeling that the referee was looked after. Envelopes of the brown variety have been exchanged. That's my thoughts.
Steady.
And they're playing Manchester United, who we talk about them having a season which is stuttering, but they keep on winning games, or at least they keep on having decent results. I mean, this was, it was a fantastic game. I mean, I must confess, it was, as a neutral, it was a wonderful game to watch. They'll probably be disappointed considering the position they were in, but that's the Champions League. Briefly offer your thoughts on what you saw, or what your thoughts were on the Newcastle game, the Man United game, and then focus on obviously the game at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very quickly on the Champions League for both clubs and heading into the big game at St James's. over the weekend. Yeah, huge games for both teams. Kind of in last chance saloon to some extent with regards to the Champions League qualification hopes and aspirations for both clubs. I think Newcastle are in a slightly better position than Manchester United at the end of those results. But just Newcastle quickly, I mean, huge controversy, right? I mean, you've got an opportunity to record an incredible win away to Paris Saint-Germain. You're winning 1-0, kind of rear guard effort at the end, Nick Pope pulling out saves. And yeah, PSG absolutely poured it on as you would expect. And I mean, the incident that everyone's been talking about, the penalty incident, I mean, it's just, I mean, they've admitted as much afterwards, haven't they? They've stood down the VAR official, I believe, from duty the day after. I mean, when a ball ricochets off any part of your body onto your hand, I mean, how that can be given as a handball is just, I was incredulous that that can be given. When you're in a running motion, your hands are going to move around a little bit, and then for it to ricochet off a body part. I mean, UEFA admitted as much, so I don't have anything more to add in terms of them accepting their error. Huge, obviously opportunity for Newcastle United, and that's sometimes the difference, isn't it, Ayub? You're talking about a club that really wants to go places. Eddie Howe still has the opportunity to get them into the last 16 if they can win their game. PSG don't win against Dortmund. They've got an opportunity to still qualify, and they'll fancy themselves at home to Milan. But even still, I mean, Eddie Howe, for whatever we say, there's still an element of pressure there you feel with Newcastle United Football Club. So I think a huge issue. I'm never one for accepting incompetence and mistakes, and I do believe that was purely incompetence. I mean, everyone could see it. If it ricochets, how can you give that as a handball? But anyway, as for United, you're absolutely right, Ayub. That was probably the game of the Champions League so far in terms of both teams going for it, which you perhaps get more of, don't you, as you kind of head into game week 5, game week 6, because teams know what they need in terms of results and maybe perhaps play a little bit more adventurous. First spot pretty much sewn up by Bayern Munich. So it's a case of Copenhagen, Galatasaray and United fighting for second spot. Just very quickly on the game. Yeah, you're right. Incredible game. I mean, Manchester United will be absolutely gutted to have led by 2 goals twice and to throw it away. They are a team. I mean, they've actually scored in all 3 away games in the Champions League, 9 goals and got 1 point to show for it. I mean, that is incredible to have that. And I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that they're a team that tends to score a few, and it's a team that tends to concede a few. Their goals difference in the Premier League right now is 0. I mean, that's the very definition of what I would class as a relatively average team. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but it's a 0 goal difference. And Newcastle are 1 point below them, 1 place below them, and got plus 17. I'm not saying the table lies. I'm simply saying that they're a team that's not as serious, let's say, about clean sheets as they were. And you saw again, Ayub, I'll let you get in here. With the goalkeeper, I mean, he's coming under huge pressure. What are your thoughts?
I just cannot believe. I mean, he's a keeper that came with a great reputation. I mean, I know obviously there was a great deal of focus on his sort of ball playing ability, which I suppose that's modern football now. But I've got to say, when I watched him, honestly, I mean, if I know who he is and I obviously know what his reputation is, but if I had no idea about football and I watched that, I actually thought it must have been a guy who's won a competition and he's had a chance to go in nets. There is such a level of incompetence that I cannot believe. I mean, I just cannot believe where he's built his reputation. He's been consistently erratic. You just think he's going to make a mistake, and invariably he makes a mistake. His positioning is poor. I mean, it just everything about a goalkeeper that shouldn't happens with this guy. I mean, I just cannot believe. I mean, David De Gea must be just. I don't know what he's. I mean, he's not obviously found a club. David De Gea. He must be thinking, what on earth has happened that they've a keeper that maybe I suppose David De Gea was past his best, but certainly I wouldn't sort of say was to a point where he was completely on the wane. This is such a regression from Manchester United that it's absolutely embarrassing. I honestly, I mean, they've invested 40 million in this keeper, so therefore, I suppose they have to play him. But it's an absolute disgrace. I cannot believe how poor he is. He's there's nothing that he's done, nothing that he's shown me. Even his distribution occasionally is great, but it's nothing spectacular. I mean, I think there's plenty of keepers who've got equally comparable distribution as this guy. So for me, it's a huge mistake. It's a waste of money. I think Man United fans should be rightly annoyed at the club for investing 40 million in the keeper and getting rid of De Gea.
Yeah, you make some good points there, Ayub. And look, I don't think I could disagree with too much there. Ultimately, the only thing I would say about his distribution is that I think the distribution element is about the team being knitted together in terms of angles, in terms of the way you want to present yourself for passes and available passes and all the rest of it. So I think his distribution is good. I think that still does require a bit of time and for the team to kind of have some chemistry in terms of where to be, where to position ourselves and what have you. Remember, they've had a lot of change in player personnel in terms of availability, right? Varane's not played much. Martinez hasn't played much. Casemiro's been injured, suspended, and all the rest of it. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of fluctuation. So I think let's just see. But I agree with you. The fundamentals of a goalkeeper is ultimately not making any mistakes or you being the reason for goals going in, right? And it's happened all too often, and we're not even at the turn of the year yet, right? And what I don't understand about the two goals, if I just very quickly, before we move on to the weekend's action, Ayub, is Ziyech's free kick, the first goal. He's so far out, Ziyech, in my opinion, there's no need for unhonest gamble. I mean, he's not trusted his wall. He's taken a step to his left. I look at the angle and the yardage from where Ziyech took that free kick. Ziyech's not known as some sort of world-class free kick expert where you're worried about his power from 30 yards that he can dip it over the wall and get it in to the top corner with significant pace. He's going to look to curl the ball. Given the distance, I think you could have trusted your wall, kept sight of the ball, and for him to take a step left is really poor in terms of the fundamentals of goalkeeping. That ball did not even end up in the corner. I mean, it went literally down his midriff if he hadn't moved. So yeah. I don't understand why you'd gamble. I understand if the ball's 20 yards out where you're trying to get a sight of the ball. And as for the second one, I mean, that is just so poor. You can say he's maybe expecting a touch, but you can't be trying to scoop it up from right underneath yourself. I think it's the fundamentals of goalkeeping where, to your point, he leaves a little bit to be desired. Footwork, kind of making those saves that he's not been an asset this season. There's no way you can say he's been a plus for them in the early part of the year. Right, let's move on to the weekend's action. That's enough goalkeeping bashing going on from both of us. But yeah, look, Man United are in dire straits with the Champions League. It'll be difficult. They've got to beat Bayern and still hope for another particular result, i.e. a draw in the other game. I struggle to see it. I mean, they've left themselves perhaps with too much to do. We'll see what team Bayern Munich hosts Fields. I think it is the game of the week, Ayub, just because I think both teams, as they showed in midweek, and I think as they've shown this season, can score goals, can concede goals. There's a lot happening at both clubs in terms of storylines and what have you. Newcastle can score plenty, as they showed against Chelsea last week. Particularly strong at home, I would say. I know they had that difficult result against Liverpool, but St. James is not the kind of ground you go to thinking, let's get 3 points. I think you're thinking, if we could get a point, let's just get out of there and all the rest of it. I know they've got one or two issues, but Newcastle also have, I think, a decent squad. But yeah, it's 6th against 7th. I mean, you mentioned, didn't you, about Man United. I mean, they're 6 points off the top. I guess you could say 7 because of that inferior goal difference, even at this early stage. With Arsenal being plus 17, Manchester United being 0 level. But they're 6 points. And I think the reason why I think this is such a huge game, especially for Manchester United, is, I mean, look, they are a colossal club in this country, in the world. And as bad a season as they've had, it's an opportunity for them to kind of go to a tough away ground, go to tough opposition, and get a result that some of the other teams will be observing and having a look at and thinking, how do they fare away at Newcastle? I think it'd give them a huge deal of confidence if they can go there and turn Newcastle over. Obviously, somebody from City and Spurs is going to drop some points, so that'll put them in an advantageous position. Some of the other teams also have some tricky games and what have you. So I think from a United perspective, it's a real opportunity to go there, lay a marker down. Do I think they've got what it takes to challenge for the title? I don't, simply because I don't think they're a well-oiled machine in terms of defensively and attacking. They're not, again, well knitted together, as I would say. But I think from their perspective, it's just such a big opportunity. They've got a couple of players who are in some decent form. They've started to score goals again. Garnacho's in obviously a little bit of goal scoring form, and what have you. Martial scored the other day against Everton. Fernandez getting a couple, he's more and more coming to the fore. So they've got a bit about them again, Ayub. Obviously at the back, they're leaking goals. Newcastle are the kind of team with their athleticism, their power. We spoke about this player at the start of the season. He's rightly getting some plaudits. Anthony Gordon, you highlighted him, Ayub, at the start of the year. And absolutely, I think he's incredible in terms of his energy and what have you. I think they played, is it 17-year-old Miley as well over the last couple of games as well. So I think it's a tough game. I'd be very surprised if Manchester United were able to get a win at St James's Park. It's a tough place to go. They are bouncing at the moment, in my opinion. They'll feel aggrieved, obviously, about the midweek result, but that the fans will come out in droves for the big game against Man United. But I do think a win for either side really will kind of set them up going into kind of that second stage and kind of that Christmas period and what have you. For United, I feel it's a little bit more of an important game, just because I think the general rule, and I'll finish on this, Ayub, is I think the general view on United is they'll beat up on some of these average teams, but when it comes to some of the bigger teams, they've not got enough. We've seen that in the Champions League. We've seen that so far, for the most part, in the Premier League. This is another huge test. Many will expect them to fall short. It's a tough ground to go. But what a huge opportunity with Manchester City also playing against Spurs, and Spurs in some relative freefall with 3 defeats on the bounce and then playing the champions. So, tough game. I'm going to go for a score draw. I'm going to go for a highly entertaining score draw. I'm going to go for 2-2, bit of controversy, maybe even the odd red card in a fiery atmosphere up there in the northeast.
I'm going for a United win. I mean, one of the reasons is that I just don't think Newcastle, I think they're still getting used to playing in the Champions League, and then the fixture after. I think the last time that they played a Champions League game, the game after was Bournemouth, and I think they were woeful. So I just think Man United are more experienced. The players are more experienced, playing Champions League and then playing a league game a few days afterwards. I just think United, it's been a strange season. I mean, we've been very critical of United, but they seem to have got results many times when they've not been the better team. I think there's just, especially with Garnacho now, I just sort of think that maybe you need one catalyst, and I think Garnacho is the catalyst. I think, and he obviously his hero is Cristiano Ronaldo, and I love the celebrations in tribute to Ronaldo, and I think he will probably be the new Ronaldo at Manchester United, and you know the impact Ronaldo had, and I've just got a feeling that they've played quite poorly, but they've got results, and I just sort of think that they're slowly but surely just piecing things together. Luke Shaw coming back is massive. I think he's been a huge miss, a huge void. They've also got players missing, but I still think that players like Shaw coming back does nothing but help solidify the team and just gives a little bit more experience to this sort of side that perhaps was not going in the right direction. I just sort of think that to play that badly and to be in a position that they're in, it's got to give you confidence. If you sort of think, well, hang on, we've not really even started, and look where we are. We're not too far away. I mean, I think you were telling me this morning that they're about 6 or 7 points away from Arsenal.
6. Well, I say 6, but they've got an inferior goal difference of 17 to Arsenal. Yeah. So I'm counting. I'm counting that as a point for now.
but in terms of points, it's 6, and that probably tells you that if you can play that badly but keep getting results, maybe it's a good reflection. And the thing, there's still camaraderie. If you look at the players, there is a togetherness. They seem to be celebrating. There seems to be, I mean, it's like sometimes you can see maybe fractures and cracks appearing in a team, but this team still seems to be in this sort of all working together. So I've got a feeling that Newcastle will feel the effects of the Champions League more than Man United. I think Man United are just sort of getting it sort of, I won't say right, but certainly sort of getting things more sort of correct in terms of what they want and what Ten Hag wants. So I'm going to sort of say that I think there'll be plenty of goals. Maybe it might be 4-2 United.
Yeah, it could be. I think it will be an incredible game. I mean, Newcastle don't really know how to play any other way in front of their home fans, and I think Man United will let them play to some extent as well. And whether Man United can pick them off, I think that's the way to play. I just think Newcastle are a strong outfit at St James's. Look, United have not drawn a game in the Premier League, and that's kind of where they've ended up, I think, sixth to some extent. If you think about some of the games that could have ended up as a draw, just a couple just to pick out, the famous game against Wolves, first game of the season. If that penalty is given and they score, that could be 1-1. You'll remember famously against Brentford, you look like you're going to lose that, then you look like you might draw it, then you might win it, then you do win it with goals in the 93rd, 97th minute. So they've not had any draws, and they're the only Premier League club. And I think that's that kind of bounce that you get from just accumulating a couple of wins is what you have. They've scored the same amount of goals as Nottingham Forest. They're nowhere near in terms of some of the big boys in terms of goals being scored. Arsenal have been hardly prolific, and they've got 27 compared to Manchester United 16, with Arsenal having also comfortably the better defense. So do I think they're one of the bigger boys? I always think goal difference. Honestly, I've always felt goal difference is a big indicator of how good a team you are. If I know this sounds weird, I actually think it's a bigger indicator than points, because points, yes, over 38 games are what they are, and that will prove itself out. I just think goal difference tells you, I mean, the art of the game is to kind of minimize goals conceded and to optimize goals scored. And it's always the top 2 or 3 teams, right, that end up having the best goal difference. And that tells you how good a team that you have. To have a level goal difference already 13 games in is telling, to me at least anyway. Look, I'm interested to see if your theory proves itself out. I think the Bournemouth game, Ayub, I think there were some special circumstances with that, with a lot of suspensions and injuries. Fine, you're right. They still dropped a clanger, didn't they? Where Bournemouth comfortably won the game. But I think it should be an incredible game in front of the TV cameras. I struggle to see Newcastle losing at home in front of their fans. So I'm going to go for a highly entertaining score draw. You've gone for 4-2 Man United. Either way, I think we're in for a treat.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's I think 8 o'clock as well, isn't it? It's a late kickoff, so should be a nice way to round off Saturday evening. Right, that's towards the top of the table, not quite the top, but we'll focus again on the area of the table that I enjoy. It's the bottom. We spoke to George earlier today, and it's, bless him, he's very much a glass half full. They've not won. I mean, they've lost the last 5 games, I think. But George was still saying that he's quite confident it's going to be a 2-0 victory. It must be a victory, because it's a big, massive game for Burnley against Sheff United. So there is absolutely, I don't think this is a game where if they lose, I think it'll be curtains. It will be absolute curtains. Obviously, it to lose against one of the bigger teams, fair enough, it's almost acceptable. But to lose against a relegation rival, especially a team that last season they were in the same division and they finished, I don't know how many points, I think 15 points. So certainly from my point of view, it's a must win. There is absolutely no question. A draw will not be good enough. It has to be a win. Kompany, I mean, we talked to George. I mean, George seems quite confident that Kompany will survive irrespective of what happens this season. But he should be under pressure, because he can't just say, right, we're in the Premier League, doesn't matter. He should be under pressure, because this is the Premier League. He's a coach. He spent 100 million. And I certainly think if you're spending 100 million, the expectation should be that he should be trying to stay in the Premier League. So I've got a feeling that they might just do it. I think Sheff United, they've been okay in terms of occasionally sort of battling hard, but I just don't think they've got the quality. Burnley, by all accounts, George keeps saying that they're playing well. Last week they should have won. I mean, it was unforgivable. I mean, they'd controlled the game up until the 85th minute. So they've got enough quality. George said 2-0. I reckon it will be 2-0 Burnley. What's your thoughts?
You say George is a glass half full kind of guy. He's overflowing. His glass is overflowing. Optimism.
He's off his head.
Yeah, and I say this respectfully, George, if you're listening, but it's delusional optimism as well at the best of times. But yeah, look, it's the life of a fan, isn't it? And look, you talked about the Championship table last year, Ayub. They were 21 points better off than Luton Town at the end. That's 7 wins better off than Luton. A better goal difference, plus 34 on Luton. That's a lot. Plus 34 on Luton. And I think just in terms of, we spoke about this last time in terms of how we see it for Burnley. And I think I just want to make the point carefully. I think they want the Burnley owners and what have you. Clearly they want Vincent Kompany to succeed. Nobody likes hiring and firing managers other than the aforementioned Massimo Cellino. But I mean, look, I think they want him to succeed. I suggested that I don't think he is safe simply because, and that's not me wishing that on him, but simply because I think Burnley, because of the reputation they came with, the football that they played in the Championship, they broke that 100-point barrier last year, amassing 101 points. And there's nobody in the footballing fraternity that felt that Burnley were a more inferior opposition or more inferior outfit than Luton. And ultimately, what the owners will be looking at is they'll be thinking, well, hang on, if the objective of the season, if the objective of the Premier League campaign is to survive, are we playing the kind of football? Are we setting ourselves up 13 games in to get, to be competitive in games? Now, at the bottom more than ever, Ayub, I think at the top it's the same. The rules of football are still the same. You've got to earn the right to win the game, right? And Burnley quite often have had leads, but ultimately, still conceding way too many goals, right? 32 goals conceded. Whereas with Luton, and we've spoken about this a few times, they find themselves in games a lot. I think they've scored the most amount of goals after the 75th minute. And I think it's a bit like a boxing or heavyweight boxing fight, right? They're thinking, right, it's all very well, let's keep it tight on points. We might even be 1 or 2 rounds behind and what have you. But if we can just take it into those championship rounds, that's when we can pour it on, because there's a certain psychology shift where the kind of superior opponent or superior team thinks, I've not got rid of him yet. So let's, it's just a certain shift. And we've seen it with Luton time and time again. Liverpool will have been expecting Luton to brush Luton aside. It's 0-0 at half time. Luton growing a bit more confidence. The crowd stays with them. They're engaged. And what happens? They get a goal on the counter attack. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. They got a huge win last week. It was, I think, interesting, wasn't it, Ayub? I think both games were being played at the same time, were reversed at the same time. Luton, I think, got pegged back by Elise and then kind of scored late to get a 2-1 win. As well as Burnley was 1-0 up against West Ham and then unfortunately had that game reversed. So it's just a bit of a sign of, in a sense, what a massive swing that could have been in terms of the Premier League table. Now, Burnley are currently 5 points behind Luton, which is a lot given that they've only won one game. I agree with you. I think it's a huge, huge game. I think a lot of owners were keeping their powder dry, shall we say, due to the events at Goodison Park with what happened to Everton. There's some talk about even more potential point deductions. I'm not sure if it'll come to that. They've submitted lodged their appeal against the 10-point deduction. But I do feel some owners will start to just worry. I think Sheff United, I'm not sure what the setup is there. There could be some rumours. You remember after the Spurs defeat, their manager was under a little bit of pressure. Not after the Spurs defeat, after the hammering they took at home to Newcastle, sorry. But Burnley, as much as they won't like it, I think if they don't pick up some results soon, and I think if that gap to survival just becomes too far, I think they may well move. I genuinely think so. Reluctantly, but I think for them, even more so than supporting Vincent Kompany, I think they want to stay in the league. And if they see that Luton Town is scrapping their way to 11 points, 12, 14, they'll think that's just too big a gap right now for us to bridge as we kind of head into that crucial Christmas period where games are coming thick and fast, right? We're about to have our first midweek fixture round in the Premier League. So Burnley have got a decent run of games. Relatively speaking, they are bottom of the table, but it all starts with Saturday. It absolutely all starts with Saturday. It's a must-win. Honestly, even at this early stage, I really do think this is a must-win. And I think if Burnley lose at home to Sheff United, I genuinely think I would worry for the coach.
There's no question he is a must-win. So I mean, to me, it's my game of Saturday. I love relegation dogfights because Leeds have been in dogfights for the last 2 seasons. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Probably next season as well.
Well, let's get to the Premier League first. That's the hard part. So I'm looking forward to that one. There is a game on Sunday, which maybe some people might think is the game of the weekend. It's Manchester City with Spurs. We had Morgie on about a week or so back. We I suppose half jokingly perhaps sort of said the wheels have come off, but we did talk about that potentially The game against Villa was a tough one, and they could lose that one. If they lose that one, the game after is against Man City, and there's a high probability they're going to lose that one. And that's 4 losses on the bounce. I really, I mean, I'm not going to sort of say I'm fearing for Spurs, but I genuinely sort of think that Spurs are in a bit of a quandary at the moment. So, what's your brief thoughts on that game? And do Spurs have a chance at all against a pretty decent Man City side?
You'd think not. Let's be clear. You'd think not. Man City are incredibly strong at the Etihad Stadium, and I think it took quite the effort from Liverpool last weekend to prevent another win, right? Another procession of Man City. I think the challenge that Spurs have got is against Villa, they were absolutely dominant, weren't they, for the most part? Early doors. They start off like a house on fire. And honestly, I've said this many, many times, but there are so many similarities between how they start games and Arsenal last season. It was absolute kind of, it's so fast, it's quick, it's the crowd's into it. There's a little bit of ping ball element to it where you get a bit of the bounce, you're riding your luck, you're going into challenges, you better win it, otherwise the other team's 3-on-2 or whatever it might be. But it's fun to watch. It's highly entertaining. And look, they've had a really good start to the season. Even still, they've had a really good start to the season. The challenge you get, and sometimes just a quirk of the kind of fixtures, some of the injuries and the suspensions and all the rest of it, is that they've ended up on this run. Now, I always felt defensively they were somewhat suspect. And as soon as they've lost a couple of players, for whatever reason, that drop off has been huge. You're right. I think it was yourself who actually may have picked Ollie Watkins to score. So that was a good pick from yourself, Ayub. But Ollie Watkins,
I did say he was going to score a hat-trick, but he scored one.
Yeah, most of our viewers know that when you say a player's going to score a hat trick, that just means he's going to score one at least. So I'll give you credit. But no, I mean, look, it was a tough one, wasn't it? That game, probably a draw, probably was the fair result. I mean, Spurs had a ton of chances, Villa had a ton of chances, goals disallowed, decisions, controversy, all the rest of it, as most Spurs games do, because they're highly entertaining. So I just think. I think they'll lose just because I think City are in a better place. They're more control. They'll feel confident. Yes, Spurs historically have been the team to give them some trouble, but I think in the absence of some key players, I don't think you can expect to go to Etihad and turn them over. I think they'll give it a good go. I think Ange will play a similar way, and I think they'll have the odd opportunity. I don't think not. They've created big chances in all types of games. Kulusevski's having a good season. Son's having a good season, although catching himself offside probably way too often. But that's not a bad thing necessarily. But yeah, I mean, City should have, for me, way too much. Another big turnaround by City in midweek after a difficult start. But yeah, I think City will have too much, and I think they'll ride out probably 3-1 winners, to be honest.
I agree. City will win, and it will be an absolute thumping. I reckon it'll be about 4 or 5. And then we can definitely say the wheels have come off. So, I mean, that's our thoughts on the top games, at least what we think is the top games at the weekend. So on that note, we're going to call it a day, but let me do the usual housework. Subscribe if you haven't. Smash a like. We've got a Twitter account or an X account. Please join that. But until the next time, stay warm. Stay indoors, watch Just Onside, that'll keep you warm. All right, so until the next time, stay offside.